Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Tim. Today we're going to look at collection types. So collection types basically let us hold more than one value. Probably the most widely used collection data type is something called a list. So what does a list do? It's similar to an array from other programming languages. It is a collection that allows us to store things in an ordered format. The way a list does that is by assigning something called an index value to each element in the array. And we can refer to these elements by their index value. And another important characteristic of Python lists is they're mutable. In other words, you can change the items after they're assigned. And we can even add or remove elements after the initial assignment too. So to declare a list, we can declare an empty list, or we can actually have data in there. Each piece of data is called a list element. But let's take a look. So you can use the open and closing square brackets and assign it to a variable name, and you have an empty list. Or you can declare a list and you can assign the data to it, known as elements. So each piece of data is known as an element. And if you take a look at the right hand side, indexes have a starting value of 0. And they go up by 1 for each element. And that's how we can refer to each individual element within a list by its index value. So there's a lot more to a list than what we've just gone through. So let's open up Visual Studio Code and we'll explore it. Okay, I created a new folder called Python Collections, and I'm going to add a new file called 01list.py. And inside of here, let's write some code. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list of student names. Okay, and we'll pick 4 student names, and we'll call the list student underscore names, and we'll assign the values to it, and I'll pick some random names. So Kate, Sue, John, and one more. How about Alice? Okay, so there's our Python list. And why don't we find out how many students are there? Okay, so Python provides us with a function we can use to determine how many elements are inside of a list. And we use something called the len method. Students, so len, parentheses, and inside of here we put our list. And that should assign number of students the number of elements in the list. And just to verify that, let's just print that off and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so we got 4. And I think we've got 4 student names, right? So that's perfect. That worked out well. Okay, now we've done this using that len, that built-in method that allows us to find out how many students are there. Let's go on to do something else. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to try and figure out here, what is the value of, let's say, the first element? Okay, and we know the index value of the first element, index 0, right? So I'll just make a variable called first student. We'll give it a value, and we'll put our list there, and square brackets, and we will refer to a specific index 0, because Python lists start at 0, right? And then we'll print that out and let's see what we get. Okay, let's run, and we get Kate. Well, I think Kate was the first name we wrote in there, so that's index 0, right? Perfect. Okay, we're just chugging along. Okay, next one. Okay, the next one's going to be, how about What is the value of the last element in the list? Okay. Now remember, we know from talking about this before that lists always start at 0. They go up by 1. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So hopefully Alice is living at index 3. So last underscore student is equal to student names 3. And let's try to print this off. So print the last student, and hopefully Alice shows up. And let's run it. And look at that. Alice showed up. Now I'm going to warn you right now, this is not probably a good way to do this. And it'll become very apparent in just a moment. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we want to add an element to the end of the list. Okay, so we write the name of the list dot append. And inside of append, what we're going to do is we're going to place in the value that we want to add to the end of the list. Now let's print the list out and let's see what we get. Well, there's Tom. He's at the end of the list. Now we got a little bit of a problem here about what is the value of the last element in the list, because we're referring to the index value of 3. Well, the last element is not the index value of 3, is it? It's actually 4. So we got a little bit of a problem. And we can verify that by seeing that Alice came out when we copied and pasted that what is the value of the last element in the list after we added a new element. So how do we take care of this? Let's make a better way. Okay? And if you notice here, the last element in this list, in this specific example, is, well, index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But how many elements do we have? We have 5. It just so happens that we can take the length of the list, which is the number of elements, subtract 1, and we'll always get the end. So this is a more dynamic way to do it. Okay? And we run that. Tom came out. Perfect. Okay? So that's a nice little trick. And this one always works. Okay? So try to keep that one in your pocket. Okay? Okay, the next list method we're going to play with is we're going to add something to a specific index value. In other words, a specific position within the list. So to do that, Python provides us with another method that we can use on a list. And this method is called insert. So insert will insert at a specific index value. So we provide that as the first argument to the insert method, and then the value that we want to add. Now if we print this off, what we're going to see is hopefully Al is in index 2, and there it is. Now notice here it shifted everything to the right. So it increased the index value of John, Alice, and Tom, whereas Kate and Sue, their index values didn't change. There are many other additional methods that you can apply to lists. So I would encourage you to look a little further because we're just scratching the surface. Thank you for watching the video. We'll see you soon.